At no time in my 48 years on this planet have I been able to identify so much attack on our freedoms as Americans in such a short period of time as I've witnessed in the last 2 weeks. We've talked at length, almost ad nauseum at times, about the proverbial snowball. And how a snowball, the bigger it gets, the farther down the hill it gets, the faster it goes. The bigger it gets, the more it takes in. And as I'm just looking around, and I just jotted down a couple of things that just pop into my mind over the last 2 weeks or so. Kind of beginning, actually probably going back about 3 weeks ago since the shooting in the South Carolina church. And everything that's come out of that. Which not all bad. I mean, there's a lot of good things going on there. Once again, our nation gets to see, the world gets to see how Christians can respond to adversity. When I think about the Oregon bakers who last fall refused to bake a cake for a homosexual wedding based on their personal convictions, and they were fined $135,000. And this last week, they were issued a gag order. So they can't even talk about it. They were doing interviews out and about their personal convictions and why they don't want to do that. And now the courts have come and said, well, you can't even talk about it. And I think to myself, can't even talk about it? We look at the ruling itself from the Supreme Court that legalized same-sex marriages in this country nationwide. Over the voice of the people in the states in many situations, in many cases. We've seen the Supreme Court of the United States rewrite Obamacare, and this isn't about Obamacare, whether it's good or bad. This is literally about the Supreme Court of the United States making law. They just don't do that. They can't do that. It's an attack on the Constitution and the separation of powers. We've seen as a result of that decision, our White House not lit up red, white, and blue for the 4th of July, but lit up the colors of the rainbow, which, ironically, the rainbow being a symbol that God handed to man as a promise that he would never, ever, ever again totally destroy mankind with water because of the wickedness and evil and corruptness of man, is now the symbol adopted by the gay community and lit up our Capitol in celebration, while overseas in celebration, ISIS takes 4 alleged homosexuals and throws them off the top of a tall building. We've seen 8 black churches in the South burn to the ground in the last 2 weeks. We've seen that the new EPA, they want to eliminate, they want to ban backyard barbecues, fireworks, and even the little sparklers, because they're polluting We saw in 2012, a couple of Harvard psychologists came out and proclaimed that pedophilia isn't a disease, it's not a mental disorder, it's a sexual orientation. In 2013, a couple of Canadian psychologists came out to the same conclusion. So is it any wonder that this past week, in light of the Supreme Court ruling, the polygamists are coming forward and the pedophiles are coming forward using the same criteria that the gay community used? They're appealing to our court system now. It's happening today. I wonder how long it will be before we put our stamp of approval on polygamy, pedophilia, and where does that stop? We are told this past week, that all the racial unrest in our country is caused by this. To the degree that TV Land has boycotted the Dukes of Hazzard.
Don't take that outside of the church.
I had it at the parade with me yesterday. 2 of them. I just stand, and as I begin to think of all of these things and look, and just allow the mind to wander as you put all of these things together, because each one of these things you can compartmentalize and you can rationalize and you can think about, and when you begin to put them all together in one big picture, and then you think, man, this is 2 weeks, the last 3 weeks. We've got the president talking about actually coming after your guns, forcefully removing guns. You've got Hillary talking about the church needs to come to some different conclusions about things. The church has to change with the culture. You've got a Wisconsin senator saying, oh, the church can do anything they want in the walls of the church, but when they go out there, this is all happening. It's all unfolding under our watch. On our watch. This week, a man I have a great respect for, who posts on Facebook a lot, and he's a polarizing figure. I get that, and I know what you feel about him. He's somebody I respect. Glenn Beck. He wrote, he just writes. I love checking into Facebook late at night, because once his wife goes to bed and his kids are in bed, he likes to sit down and think on paper. And it's usually an incredible blessing for me to be able to read. This was actually, he had it on Facebook, but it was the monologue to his show, I believe Friday. I just wanted to read it to you. It's rather a little lengthy, but I want you to hear what he had to say. It was December 23rd, 1776. We were 6 months into the Revolution. We had lost every single battle. George Washington was on the southern side of the Delaware, and he needed to turn his troops around and cross the Delaware and go up and fight the Hessians. They were the Navy SEALs of the day. Everyone was saying that George Washington was a failure, and we had gone from 20,000 troops and we're down to less than 2,000 troops. And nobody wanted to get into the boat and go across the river. Somewhere in the countryside, Thomas Paine, a guy who later became an atheist, was marching in the mud. And he was marching next to a drum, and after a few words kept pounding through his head, he finally asked the drummer for the head of the drum because it didn't have any paper on it. He wrote a few words down, rolled them up, gave them to a writer, and said, "Get this to Philadelphia. Have them print it, and then find George Washington. He needs these words." They arrived at the site of George Washington on December 24th, 1776. He read them. He wept. He went to his troops, and he read them. Out loud he said, "These are the times that try men's souls." The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of many men and women. Tyranny, like hell, isn't easily conquered. Yet we have the consolidation with us that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives us everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Whether we should have started this movement long ago or we started too soon, I'm not going to enter the argument. I had my own simple opinion. We didn't use the proper use of the time that we have had. However, the fault, if there be one, is our own. We have no one to blame but ourselves. As I read this morning, I thought to myself, how true that is. Why are we so surprised? We went along to get along. We went along because we didn't want any trouble. I don't want any trouble. Don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I'll just be quiet. Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics in public. I'm going on to see that movie anyway because I know, my kids know the difference. It's our failure. It's our failure to stand. Should we have started this long ago? Yeah, probably. But why debate that now? The only one we have to blame any of this on is us. How many of us just stopped going to church? And we stopped going to church for a couple of reasons. One, lazy. It's not going to make a difference. I'm not really sure God exists. Whatever, I'm tired. I'm working all the time. Or some good reasons. They're not teaching me anything. There's no relevance there. It really doesn't make a difference. Because I go into church and then by the time I hit the parking lot, everybody is honking at each other. Nobody knows each other. It doesn't make an impact in my life at all. Why am I going to church? That's a failure, not only of the pulpit, but again of us. Because we didn't demand that our pulpits would stand. How many of us go to church right now that isn't talking about things? And have we thought, they're not talking about things because they're afraid. They're afraid that you're going to say something. Have you thought about getting a bunch of the people that you go to church with and signing a petition and saying, we want you to talk about these things, pastor, priest, rabbi. We want a few things addressed. And all of us are going to stand behind you if you do. Don't worry about what comes. This storm, we will be the shelter from your storm because we need to hear the truth on these things. How many of us went to church and we never talked about it? We never talked about the traditional family. We never talked about abortion. We never talked about euthanasia. We're not talking about the Christians being killed now overseas. We're not talking about the 4 homosexuals that were thrown off the roof Friday in celebration that love always wins. We can argue about when we should have started it, what we should have done. We can have that discussion, but why? It's worthless. How about we start right now? How about we start standing right now? I had to give a talk at a church, a youth conference on Saturday. There were about 1,500 kids. And I think I took their breath away because I walked up in front of them and I said, you know what? I have to tell you, I don't really like church people. There's kind of a nervous laughter. But they knew that I was serious. I don't like church people. I don't like church people in most churches because church people are the most judgmental people I've ever met in my life. Church people will tell me their testimony. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. Here's what I like. I like people who live their testimony. I don't have to ask you for your testimony because I see it in your life. I don't have to ask you if you go to church because you bring the church with you everywhere you go. Everywhere you go is a sacred place. You live those principles, not on Sunday when you go, not on Saturday, but you live them all the time. I don't like church people because church people understand that church is a place that I go on Sunday. And testimony is something that I share occasionally when asked, where I have the opportunity to change someone's heart. So I'll share my testimony. I like the people that understand that church is wherever you are, and testimony is exactly how I live my life. I like people that happen to look at church as a hospital, because that's what it is for me. It's a hospital for my soul, because I'm on the verge of losing my soul every day. I don't know about you, and if you don't think that you're going to come under attack, because these are the times that try men's souls, if you don't think you're going to come under attack with your soul and everything that, you're fooling yourself. I need to get in there because I'm so badly wounded. By the time I get to Sunday, I need some medicine. I need some help. I need to be able to make it the next 7 days. I don't like church people generally because they worry so much about everybody else's soul. And that's nice. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate their prayers. I really do. But church people generally worry about everybody else's souls so much more than theirs. Because they've accepted Jesus Christ, and that's all they have to do. I'm good. No, no, no. I accepted him. What? I'm sorry, but I don't buy that. I buy that if you have accepted him, that people can spot you a million miles away. When you walk into a room, the room changes. You're different because you've accepted him. You've changed. You're not like everybody else. You're quieter, you're more gentle, you understand what your citizenship means, and you're concerned about your citizenship in the kingdom. See, we've all been so concerned about this kingdom. We've been so concerned about this country and our citizenship in this country. Time magazine said we're exiles in our own land. That's Time magazine over the weekend. We're exiles in our own land. We've lost our citizenship, gang. Why? Because we've been quiet. And we haven't trusted the power of God. We say a bunch of stuff, but I don't think we even believe that stuff. Why are we so defeated? Do you not tell me that everything that you don't understand and you don't believe, that everything is according to his will, that everything will be used for the good of those who love him? I do. So why are we defeated? We're defeated because we're worried about everybody else. We're defeated because we see what's happening on television. We see what people are like in colleges. We see what people are like in our own business. We see what people are posting, but we don't see what he's doing. Because we're not taking any time to be quiet enough, humble enough to listen to what he's doing. To find out what he's doing and what he's doing right now, I'm convinced, is he's preparing his people. Gird up your loins. Do you know what that means? Gird up your loins? It's when those guys used to wear those, I don't know, what do you call those dress things? And they didn't have pants. So what you had to do was you reached down from behind your legs and you grabbed the skirt thing that you were wearing, your tunic, and you pulled it up behind you. Then you took each end of it and you tied it in front of you so it became almost like a diaper. Why? Because you were about to go into battle. You needed to move quickly. You couldn't be tripping on your tunic. Gird up your loins. That's what he's telling his people right now. Gird them up. Get ready. You haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen evil yet. You don't even know what's coming your way. But have faith in me, because evil doesn't have any idea what's coming its way. We lost our first citizenship. I'm not going to lose my second citizenship. And that's the only one I care about. And yes, I care about your citizenship. And I will pray for you. My family and I pray for you every day. And I hope you pray for me every day. And I will worry about others. And I will talk to them about the truth at any time that I can. But I will live my testimony. So I don't have to talk to everybody because there's too many people to talk to. Hopefully they will see it and they will say, I want to be more like that guy, because that's the way I learned. My friend Pat, I wanted to be more like that guy. He could weather the storm that I couldn't. Why? Because he knew what the truth was. Now is the time. You let him and his word be your sword. You let him be your shield. But we must be gentle. We must be loving. We must clothe ourselves in humility. We must be bold yet humble, bold yet kind, bold yet loving. That's hard. We've never done that before. There's a lot coming. Thomas Paine said, I once felt that kind of anger which men ought to feel, but I was standing at the door of a tavern with a man who had a pretty child at his hand, about 8 or 9 years old, and after speaking his mind as freely as he thought was prudent, he said, just give me peace in my day. But if there be trouble, let it be in my day, that my child should have peace. He said, I thank God that I fear not, for I see no real cause for fear. I'm going to quit this class of men who are smarter, perhaps, than I, or wealthier than I turn with warm ardor of a friend, those who have nobly stood and yet determined to stand the matter out. I call not upon a few, but upon all, not on this state or that state, but on every state to help us. Lay your shoulder to the wheel. It's better to have too much force than too little. Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could possibly survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet it and repulse it. Say not that thousands were gone. Turn out your tens of thousands. Throw not the burden on the day to providence, but show your faith by your works, that God may bless us. It matters not where you live or what rank of life you hold. The evil or the blessing will reach you all. The far and the near, the home counties and the back, the rich and the poor will suffer or rejoice alike. That heart that feels is not right is now dead, and the blood of his children will curse his cowardice. The man who shrinks back at a time when a little might have saved the whole and made them happy. I love the man that can smile in trouble, that can gather strength from distress, and that can grow brave by reflection. I was challenged once again by those words. 2 weeks ago we talked on Father's Day about fathers looking for men of courage, looking for men of valor. I'm wondering, as we read 1 Samuel chapter 4, and the Philistines are the ones that made the statement, and the Philistines were prepared to fight, and the Philistines rose up and went up against the Jews, and they won. And we're reminded once again in our world that as we look around and the things that I've mentioned, the things we've talked about, and so much more, that Satan isn't giving up. The enemy is not quitting. In fact, he's fighting all the harder. He's fighting for our country. He's fighting for our churches. He's fighting for morality. He's fighting for basic moral truth. He's fighting for your kids. He's fighting for your grandkids. He's fighting for your great-grandkids. He would destroy it. He would take it all away. But we were reminded by Jesus a couple of things, and things that we ought to remember. And one of the things that not just Glenn talks about, and he spends a lot of time on his radio show talking about this little thing, but we have been called to fight, yes, but we've been called first to love. We've been called to love people. And we're reminded in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus said, love your enemy. Do good to those who persecute you. So what good does it do if you just love the ones that love you? If you just love the ones that think the way you think? And so when we're looking into our culture and all the vile things that are being said on both sides of the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage, it's vile, it's despicable, some of the things that I hear coming out of Christians' mouths. Because we're reminded by Paul in Ephesians 6 and verse 12, and this we have to remember. We have to remember this as we fight. Because this is a secondary call 2 weeks later from the first. Where are the men of valor? Where are the men of courage? But think about this. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God. That, men and women, is what we're going to stand on. We're going to take up the whole armor of God to fight. We're going to fight. We're going to have to fight. We're going to have to put our gauntlet down. We're going to have to take up our sword. And we will have to do battle in our country. We'll have to do battle in our communities. We'll have to do battle in our families. We'll have to do battle in our churches. But we do battle by proclaiming truth. We stand on this. We stand on this. This morning we pledged allegiance to this. We pledged allegiance to this. We pledged allegiance to this. But I got news for you this morning. This does not make you a Christian. This does not make you free. This does not make you racist. These are symbols of things. And one of the great tragedies in our culture today, and I will use this as a prime example, is there is a vast conspiracy out there. I know it's the C word. Nobody likes the C word. You conspiracy, everybody starts rolling their eyes. Oh my word, the preacher's lost it. There's a vast conspiracy out there led by Satan himself to destroy everything we've talked about. And one of the ways that he does that is he uses a method of rewriting or eliminating history. Which of these flags flew over racism the longest? Which of these flags flew over slavery the longest? Yet this flag, because it became the flag of the southern states who were seceding from the Union in a war that was primarily fought because the South was going to secede from the Union, has become somehow the reason for all the civil unrest in our country. No, it hasn't. This is but a flag. It's a piece of our heritage. It's a piece of who we are. And just as when Joshua and the Israelites crossed the Jordan into the Promised Land, God said, here's the deal, set up a monument. Take 12 stones and set them up so that you can tell your kids and their kids' kids, and they can point back and they'll say, Mom, what's that? And you can tell them. And yes, our country has come through some dark times, and we've gone through the ugly rituals of slavery, which, if I may add and interject at this point, was in the North too. But now we would assign a piece of our history so that we could never go back to a conspiracy whose objective is to divide and conquer. Divide the American people and conquer. That's the objective. I'm not casting any blame on man, because we're wrestling not against flesh and blood. There are people who are living in this world deceived and doing despicable things. But our war is not with them. We're called to love them because they're created with the image of God, just like you and I. And God loves them and they have value. And I'm talking about the ISIS militant. I'm talking about the drug dealers and the pimps. And I'm talking about the most evil, vile people on the planet. I'm talking about people who don't think the way you think. People who stand against things you think. Created in the image of God. We all have value. Our battle is not with those people. Our battle is with Satan. And we don't fight it. He wants us to pick up our arms and fight each other. He wants us to defame each other. He wants us to tear each other down. He wants us to pick up arms and fight each other and kill each other and put each other down. That's what he wants because he wins. But Jesus taught us how to fight. The words of Paul, put on the whole armor of God. You got some chance this week, read about the armor of God that we're going to put on, because we're doing battle in the heavenlies. And there is a battle waging. We can't deny it. We cannot deny it. And the only thing or person that can stop the snowball is Jesus Christ. And I'm asking this morning, there's so much that I wanted to say. There's so much that I wanted to say. I'm asking you this morning, men, where's the Joshuas and the Calebs? Where's the Joshuas? Choose you this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Where's our Joshuas? Where's our Calebs? I'm old. Give me my sword. God said I can have it. I'm going to get it. Where's my Calebs? Where's my Davids? Where's our Peter and Pauls? Whether this be right or not, you decide. But we can't keep our mouths shut. We have got to talk about the truth. We have got to talk about what we've seen. We've got to talk about this Jesus. And we can't be silenced. Do what you got to do. We're not going to stop. Ladies, and don't take this wrong, but where are the Rahabs? Where are the ones that will say, I don't care what it costs me. I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to stand for what's right. Where's our Deborahs? Where are the ladies that are going to pick up the slack, if they're slack? They're going to do what needs to be done. The time is now. This is the time. The first words of Thomas Paine. These are the times that try men's souls. Oh, my friends, these are those times. These are our times. This is our time to decide what we're going to do with the Republic. Because our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren are coming up behind, and if the Lord tarries, what are we leaving them? The way I see it right now, we're leaving them a shell of what the founders created with regards to personal liberty and freedom. We're leaving an empty, powerless church in the culture, and a culture who forsakes biblical morality, anything that's truth, and we're leaving them a mountain of debt that will never be repaid. They will never have anything of their own. It will be owned by foreign countries. That's what our legacy is for our kids right now. My prayer is that we say no more. Stop. And the frustration is, I know that we say, but I'm just one person. But I'm just one. We're not fighting it. God wants to fight this for us. He wants to win this for us. I mean, you look at it this way. Regardless of what happens to the United States of America, the battle's been won. We get that. The war's over. Jesus won. Whatever happens to the United States of America, one day he's going to come back for his church, and it's not going to change that. My question is, when I stand before God one day, and I will, and he asks me what kind of a steward I was with the nation that he handed over to me, what did I do? How did I protect it? How did I use it to do good in the world? And I will stand there one day, and so will we all. And this isn't a Republican thing, this isn't a Democrat thing, this isn't a liberal thing, this isn't a conservative thing, this is not a political thing, this is a spiritual thing. Amen. God said, if my people, who are called by my name, would humble themselves and, the phrase we always like to forget, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will heal their land. Wouldn't it be cool if the United States of America isn't listed specifically in prophecy because there were so many Christians, so many God-fearing people, that when Christ raptured his church, this place became irrelevant. Why does it have to be this, oh, America, I can't find it in prophecy. It must die. It must go away. It must be overrun. It's not written. America's epitaph isn't written. Let's write it. Let's write it. And it's time for us to pick up the gauntlet. It's time for us to lay down the gauntlets. It's time for us to pick up the battle. It's time for us to be the patriots. It's time for us. Man. There's a couple highlights I wanted to get to just from the declaration. I have something for you guys this morning. Here's my question. 56 men, 239 years and 1 day ago, placed their signatures on a document that was 1,333 words long. My question for you this morning is, if you were to define, to sit down and put on paper, what is it that I'm willing to die for? What is it that I'm willing to risk everything for? What is it in my world? I don't like the direction. I see things and it's wrong. I'm making my declaration of independence. What does it look like? What goes on your paper? Because 1,333 words is nothing. In conversation, that's about 5 minutes, tops. It's not a big thesis. It's not a book. It's a statement. This is what I'm willing to risk everything for. What does it look like for you today? I'm asking this morning that we resolve to something. That at the very least, here's what I'm asking. I know probably everybody in here at some point prays for our country. This is my prayer for you. Would you pray this? Because we have Caleb's in here. We have Caleb's in here. We have Joshua's in here. We've got David's in here. Is it you? Would you pray, rather than praying, God, heal our land, pray this way. God, here I am. Send me. I'm 7. I'm 15. I'm 22. I'm 50. I'm 80. I'm 90. God, send me. Increase my circle of influence. Give me influence. Give me a forum. Give me a platform. Give me a voice. I think God will. I'm telling you, I'm expecting to go on a ride. Because that's been my prayer. I'm praying, Lord, whatever it looks like. If you need somebody to stand up, if you need somebody volunteer to be the first preacher to go to jail, are we willing? What is it? What is it that we're willing to do? I'm praying that God will give me a platform. I'm not the greatest speaker in the world, but I got a message. I'm standing on that. I don't have to be eloquent. Why do you believe that, Pastor Ron? Because the Bible says so. God told me. God promised me. And may my prayer be the closing sentence of our Declaration of Independence. And for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honors. Would you be so bold as to stand with me?